Speaker. I'm grateful to you for allowing me to make my maiden speech in this House today, and especially glad to be doing it in front of your good self. In the past few weeks, I have listened to and had the opportunity to speak in some excellent debates about foreign affairs, international development, and the nation's finances. But I've waited to make my maiden speech in a Home Affairs debate. Home Affairs is often not seen as a glamorous policy area. It is often overlooked and it is undervalued. But it is a policy area that affects everybody all of the time, and you only tend to notice it when it's not working properly. And Mr. Speaker, let me assure you that after 13 years of the last government, people in Cannock Chase have been noticing it more and more. Uncontrolled immigration, police filling in forms rather than being out on the streets, an explosion in knife crime, burglars being given more rights than the owners of the homes into which they are breaking, and a general culture of petty lawlessness and a lack of responsibility have all combined to make local people feel less safe and less secure. And if we on this side are to do anything with our time in office, I sincerely hope that we will restore a sense of confidence and pride in our communities, which brings with it a sense of order and security. But first, let me turn to Cannock Chase and its predecessors. Traditionally a bellwether seat, Cannock Chase has a long history. Cannock, or as it was then called Chennet, was mentioned in the Domesday Book in 1086 and is thought to mean hillock. It has been home over the years to kings and to coal miners. In the reign of Henry VIII, the oak-filled forest of Cannock Chase was frequented by the king and the gentry for hunting. But then came the Industrial Revolution, and it became the petrol station of the country, with coal from its mines fueling the factories and the nation's industries. In 1958, the Chase, the largest surviving area of lowland heath in the Midlands, was designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty because of its beautiful landscape, its wildlife, and its history. And the Chase is still home to some 800 wild fallow deer that descend from the very original herd introduced in Norman times for hunting purposes. Fast forward now to 2010, and the Chase is famous for its mountain biking trails and for its musical concerts. Since 2006, the forest has been used for as an open-air music venue, hosting stars like Jules Holland and Status Quo. And in fact, I was there just 2 weeks ago when I took my mum and my girlfriend to see Simply Red. The constituency comprises 3 main towns, Cannock, Hensford and Rugeley. Each has their own character, their history and traditions, although increasingly their own problems as well. And our challenge in Cannock Chase is to restore these towns to their former glory, where shops are opening, not closing, where people move to and not from, and where businesses and families can thrive and stay. And I personally very much hope to be a catalyst for that regeneration. Cannock Chase has been fortunate to have been served by hard-working and dedicated members. My honourable friend, the member for Aldershot, never shy at coming forward, but always first to defend the nation's interests, began his political career there in 1983, eventually rising to become Lady Thatcher's PPS. And although he now finds himself representing the people of Aldershot, he is still remembered fondly by many constituents that I spoke to during the election campaign, and it's a great pleasure to see him continuing to serve the nation in his new front bench role. More recently, the seat was in the capable hands of my predecessor, Dr. Tony Wright, from 1992 to his retirement in 2010. Dr. Wright was well respected on all sides of this House. Not only was he independent-minded and not afraid to stand up and criticise his own government when he felt it right to do so, he also had a keen interest in the political process, and his most significant contribution to this House was that of the Wright Committee. In the light of the expenses scandal, the country and the Commons cried out for real and lasting reform, and in a very calm and measured way, Tony Wright and his committee delivered this. The recommendations from his report, which are now being implemented in full by this coalition government, have ensured that the role and the relevance of Parliament as an institution is increased, as is that of backbenchers. In my view, he was simply one of the best parliamentarians that we have had in recent times. And therefore, frankly, it is no wonder that he never got to serve as a Secretary of State. Only in the Labour Party could they ignore such talent and put their spin above his substance. I'm sure the House would join with me in wishing him a happy and healthy retirement. I'd very finally just like to make a brief mention of my right honourable friend, the member for Derbyshire Dales and Government Chief Whip, known in a former life as Cannock Chase District Councillor McLaughlin. A former miner at Littleton Colliery, Cannock is very proud to call him one of its own. Mr Deputy Speaker, Cannock Chase is sometimes called the forgotten part of the West Midlands. Often dismissed as a former mining town, it's been ignored by the Conservatives for too long as a no-hoper, and it's been taken for granted by Labour. People locally told me that they have felt let down by Labour. One day when I was campaigning with my great friend, ally and supporter, the Honourable Member for Lichfield, who was so key to my success in the election, I met an elderly lady who came up to me and said, "Young man, there's only one thing worse than being let down, and that is being taken for granted." Well, as a Conservative representing a former mining seat, I will not, I cannot, ever take their votes for granted. Before coming back to Home Affairs, I just wanted to briefly mention my family. I don't come from an especially political family, but my great-grandmother was one of the first ever female councillors in Birmingham, admittedly for the Labour Party, in the early 1950s. She fought one parliamentary election and 8 municipal ones, and my mother and my grandmother still live in the Moseley and Kings Heath ward she stood for on 3 occasions before finally getting elected in Longbridge. A successful cafe owner, in 1950, when the House of Commons kitchens were reported in the national press at running at a loss, she publicly offered to supervise the catering right here, pay £1,000 for the privilege of doing so, and still make a profit. History does not record why she was never taken up on this. But that is the article which reports exactly that. My parents both ran small businesses in manufacturing and public relations and instilled in me those small business values of hard work and self-reliance, something many in this country would do well to follow. And because of their hard work and success, they were able to send me to the best secondary independent school in Birmingham, King Edward's in Edgbaston. At the time, over a third of the school was there on some form of an assisted place, which engendered an incredible atmosphere of competitive learning. I very much hope that during my time in this House, the education debate can return to one of selection by ability, whereby the brightest pupils are taught with their peers in exactly the same way that the best young sportsmen are intensively coached in academies to become the stars and Olympians of tomorrow. Mr Deputy Speaker, I talked earlier of the importance of Home Affairs policy, and I'm delighted to be speaking in a debate which, to me, represents one of the continuing running sores of our criminal justice system, that of the continued lack of anonymity to men who are accused of rape. Mr Speaker, let's not beat about the bush here. A false allegation of rape can ruin a man's life. Even if he's tried in a court of law and found not guilty, he will still remain suspect in many people's eyes. Human nature is to say that there is no smoke without fire, especially, it would seem, when it comes to the thorny issue of rape. And it is virtually impossible for a man to survive an accusation of rape without a stain remaining on his character. There will always be whispers and rumours and slurs. So to me, what this debate is about is very simple. It is about avoiding punishment before and sometimes without trial. That is why I welcome this debate and the government's proposals to grant defendants in rape cases anonymity. For me, anonymity only until trial is not enough, because the principle of no smoke without fire still applies. Surely everyone in this House would accept the principles of equality before the law and equality between men and women. Surely everybody here would also believe that people are innocent until they are proven guilty. But the situation that we have now in the law is that it protects women in rape trials, but it doesn't protect men. It gives women anonymity, but not men. A special legal exemption has been made in the case of rape, but why has it been made just for those making the accusation? Why does that same protection not apply to those who are being accused? If we are singling out this particular area of the criminal justice system for special treatment, then why should that special treatment not apply equally to both men and to women. Male defendants should be afforded the same protections as women making the accusations, because every man is innocent until he is proven guilty. If women need anonymity in this particular type of case, then so do men. Of course, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we would all agree that men who are convicted of rape should have their names made public. Convicted rapists should be known, and they should face the consequences of their actions in terms of public opinion towards them. All that the government's proposals would mean is simply that a man would face these social penalties after he has been convicted of the offence, rather than facing advanced trial by others who will always think that there is no smoke without fire. And in high-profile cases, it also will avoid trial by media in advance of trial by court. Listening to all the arguments today, I still don't really understand why some of the members opposite oppose this simple reform. I've heard that somehow if men are given anonymity, then that might discourage other women from coming forward. But let's not forget that guilty men will still be exposed when convicted. And if anything, this should encourage more women to come forward, because they will have seen that a conviction has been successful. There is, of course, a strong argument for no anonymity at all in any legal case. And if we believe in a completely open system of open justice in this country, we would agree with that. But the reality is that exceptions have already been made in cases such as those involving children or women making accusations of rape. But surely if the male defendant in rape cases is innocent, then he is just as vulnerable. Why are women and children vulnerable, but not men? No one opposite has answered that to me today. The law is the law, and it should treat men and women equally dispassionately or equally protectively, and that is why we should either remove the right of anonymity for women, which no one is suggesting, or we should extend it to men under precisely the same principle that is already extended to women. We should do everything we can to avoid punishment before, and sometimes without, trial in this, the mother of all parliaments.
Megma.